Hey guys, and welcome to another edition to the Get Started series. In this series, we're going to be giving you all the information you need to get started on Elemental Shaman. This includes talents, Azerite traits, stats, rotation, and more. All information in this guide has been given to us by Tempo Storm's Jamie, who's well known for consistently being one of the best and highest rated tournament competing Elemental Shamans. First up, as always, let's start with talents. Elemental Shaman talents are quite standardized, meaning we're only ever going to be changing a few depending solely on matchups. In Battle for Azeroth, the majority of your damage comes from Earthshock, so we're going to be looking for talents that maximize Earthshock damage while giving us the most Maelstrom generation to get off more Earthshocks. First up, for the level 15 talents, we have the choice between Exposed Elements, Echo of the Elements, and Elemental Blast. Exposed Elements is useless as Lightning Bolt already does next to no damage. Elemental Blast is more focused around PvE and giving you the increased stats. The problem with Elemental Blast in PvP is that it doesn't deal much damage or generate any Maelstrom, and it also opens you up to getting locked on every skull. Echo of the Elements, however, adds a charge to your Lava Burst, meaning you're going to be having more damage, more Maelstrom over the course of a game. Next up are the level 30 talents. Here we have the choice between Aftershock, Master of the Elements, and Totem Mastery. Master of the Elements gives you a 20% increase on either Nature or Frost once you Lava Burst. This could potentially be decent if it wasn't for the pure amount of damage Earthshock does, meaning Aftershock is going to be giving you some insane damage if you're lucky enough to get procs, giving you a small chance to close out games instantly. Totem Mastery doesn't do anything to increase your Earthshock damage, so shouldn't ever be considered. For the level 45 talents, we have the choice between Spirit Wolf, Earth Shield, and Static Charge. With Static Charge being primarily focused around PvE, it leaves us with Spirit Wolf and Earth Shield. Spirit Wolf should be taken versus teams where you are likely to need to be kiting often, and are worried about dying inside of stuns, as pre-Ghost Wolf in a stun could give you some strong damage reduction. Earth Shield, however, is better in matchups where you won't often be in Ghost Wolf, and the increased healing throughout a game Earth Shield brings will add up, such as in Caster Mirrors, for example. On the level 60 talent tier, we have the option to choose between High Voltage, Storm Elemental, and Liquid Magma Totem. All of these talents are not great in PvP. Liquid Magma Totem can be killed or simply moved out of. Storm Elemental doesn't really bring any more damage than Fire Elemental, and it's hard to stack up in PvP as you're not going to be really standing still and free casting Lightning Bolts or Chain Lightning. So that leaves us with High Voltage. This will simply give us a little extra damage and Maelstrom generation when casting Lightning Bolt or Chain Lightning, and synergizes well with Stormkeeper. For the next row, we have the choice between Nature's Guardian, Ancestral Guidance, and Windrush Totem. Nature's Guardian heals you for 20% of your maximum health when you are below 35%. Ancestral Guidance makes you heal for 25% of the damage you deal, and Windrush Totem gives you and your team a little extra mobility. On this row, you want him to always be taking Nature's Guardian. This gives you the extra defensive and can help you survive swaps, and when compared to the other two, gives you a far greater chance at surviving. On the level 90 talent row, we have the choice between Earthen Rage, Primal Elementalist, and Ice Fury. Earthen Rage provides some weak single target damage and no Maelstrom generation, so shouldn't ever be considered. Primal Elementalist empowers and increases the damage of your elementals, and also gives you access to a 40% damage reduction from your Earth Elemental, as well as a stun. This can be considered in some matchups where you feel you need an extra defensive to survive, and won't be able to get many occasions to free cast, such as versus rogue teams. Ice Fury, however, should be taken in the majority of situations due to the extra Maelstrom generation combined with the decent damage from the ability, as well as the empowered Frost Shocks. It also gives you another skull to cast when interrupted. Finally, for the last row, we have the choice between Unlimited Power, Stormkeeper, and Ascendance. Unlimited Power and Ascendance are focused more for PvE, requiring you to stand still and free cast for them to be of any use. This leaves us with Stormkeeper. This makes your next 2 lightning bolts or chain lightning instant and trigger an additional overload on every target. This combined with high voltage gives you some insane Maelstrom generation, meaning you are able to get more Earth Shocks off. Now you know the correct talents, let's cover PvP talents. In Battle for Azeroth, you now have the choice between 3 talents and a trinket, so it gives you a lot of combinations you can play versus certain compositions. First up, let's cover trinket choice. For trinkets, you have the choice between Adaption, Gladiator's Medallion, and Relentless. Adaption gets you out of the first crowd control that hits, that is longer than 5 seconds, but has a 1 minute cooldown. This shouldn't ever be taken as it's too easily exploited by your opponents. Gladiator's Medallion gives you full control of your trinket, allowing you to leave any form of crowd control with a 2 minute cooldown, and should be taken in the majority of situations as you can use it both aggressively to score a kill and defensively to survive when you might otherwise die. Last up is Relentless. This reduces all crowd control onto you by 20%, but you lose the ability to leave crowd control when required. This should be taken versus teams with consistent crowd control, but where you think you will survive without the need of a trinket. A good example of this would be versus Shadow Priest Mage Resto Druid. PvP talents are heavily determined by what comp you are facing and what you are playing, so the best way to cover PvP talents is to go over all viable ones and which situations you should play them, so you can select the best 3 for the situation you are in. There is one PvP talent that you should be taking in all situations, and that is EARTHFURY. This makes your Earth Shock when used with at least 100 Maelstrom stun the target for 2 seconds. This adds so much extra utility. It can be used to interrupt casts, set up kills, and even finish enemies off. Now let's cover the other viable talents that you will combine with EARTHFURY depending on what you are facing. Grounding Totem should be taken whenever you are facing a team with casters, or when you think you will be able to ground important spells from melees, such as Hammer of Justice or Death Grip to name a few. It has both defensive and offensive uses, giving you the ability to ground interrupts so you can free cast, or the ability to ground crowd controls for either you or your healer. Lightning Lasso can be taken in situations where your team lacks stuns, but you need that extra little bit of lockdown to score a kill or survive. A good example of this would be playing with an Affliction lock versus things like Rogue or Mage, where you have little to no stuns but your opponents can be deadly if left free. Sky Fury should be taken most of the time when playing with another caster, and in most situations where you don't need the survivability or lockdown from other talents, as combining Sky Fury with your burst can increase your damage substantially. Spectral Recovery should be taken when you find yourself having to kite often in Ghost Wolf to survive. This increases your movement speed and adds a decent heal when you're in Ghost Wolf. Some great examples of when to take this are versus cleaves that are training you, and you need to gain distance to be able to free cast. This can also synergize well with the Spirit Wolf talent. Swelling Waves can be taken versus teams when you find yourself having to heal insert yourself often, as it will heal you for 50% of the heal 3 seconds after. Some good examples of this are in caster mirrors, where you can often survive the enemy's pressure by lining and healing surging yourself after. Elemental Attunement can be taken primarily in situations where you don't need grounding and in setup based comps. With Earthshock being capped at 60 Maelstrom, this allows you to chain back-to-back Earthshocks for insane burst on a target. In Battle for Azeroth, you have the option to get Azerite Traits on 3 pieces of your gear. These are head, shoulders and chest. For Elemental, there is one main trait that is head and shoulders above the rest, and that is Lava Shock. Currently the majority of your damage comes from Earth Shock, and this trait gives you increased damage to Earth Shock every time your Flame Shock does damage, allowing you to deal upwards of 18k additional damage per Earth Shock. This trait stacks, so you should be looking to get this on 3 pieces of Azerite gear. If you are unable to get this trait however, the second best is Igneous Potential. This just flat out increases your Lava Burst damage and chance to proc, so should be taken in situations where you are unable to get Lava Shock onto your gear. However, when aiming for the Lava Shock traits, you have the option to choose 2 defensive traits. You should always be focusing on gaining 3 Lava Shock traits, but there are some good defensive traits to look out for also. These include Pack Spirit. This gives you some extra healing while inside Ghost Wolf, synergizing well with Spectral Recovery and Spirit Wolf, meaning you can often just stay in Ghost Wolf and kite to survive. Elemental Shamans can often fend for themselves with strong off-heals and the ability to kite, so stuns are often the bane of Elemental Shamans. Azerite Fortification allows you a higher chance of surviving during these situations, so you should also keep an eye out for it. Now you know what talents, PvP talents and traits you should be aiming for, let's cover stats and gearing. In Battle for Azeroth, stats once again matter, so making sure you're going for the correct secondary stats is once again important in gaining that edge. For Elemental, your stat weights look like this. You want to primarily be focusing on intellect, and then as a secondary stat you want to be getting the maximum haste. Haste is good for shorter globals and faster ticks on your flame shocks, giving you more Maelstrom. After haste you will be wanting to aim for versatility. This gives you a little boost to your defenses and a boost in damage. Mastery is up next, but isn't that valued due to the majority of your damage coming from Earth Shock, and it not being affected by Overload. Last up is Crit. Crit is already nerfed by 50% in PvP, and with Lava Burst already being a 100% crit chance, it's of even less value to an Elemental. As for enchants, your goal is to gain maximum haste, so you should be looking to get haste enchants on both your rings and your weapon. Last up, let's do a quick recap on how to deal damage as an Elemental. Currently, a huge amount of your damage is coming from Earth Shock alone, so you'll be wanting to maximize your Earth Shock damage and Maelstrom generation. A simple rotation looks like this. You want to first make sure you are using Flame Shock whenever it's off cooldown to maximize Lava Surge procs, as well as stacking your Azerite trait, Lava Shock. You will also be wanting to use Lava Burst on cooldown, making sure to use procs as you get them and to never cap at 2 charges. This will give you the maximum Maelstrom generation possible. You will also be wanting to use Ice Fury off cooldown, as the Maelstrom generation from it and empowered Frost Shots can deal some good damage, and looking to use Stormkeeper with Chain Lightning on stacked up targets. Fire Elemental should also be used off cooldown for the increased damage. However, your main goal is to set up kills with your teammate with Earth Shocks, making sure to try to combine it with unused trinkets, Sky Fury and any other modifiers such as racials and procs at your disposal. Okay guys, that just about wraps up this Get Started Elemental Shaman guide. I hope you now have all the information you need to be able to get started going into Battle for Azeroth. As always, thanks for watching and be sure to plus skill and leave any comments you still may have below.